The fascinating thing when it comes to a character like Miranjo is when we look at ranking of kings as a whole, every character has appeared to be more than what's initially meeting the eye. Whether it's, oh, here's the classic evil snake character, actually turns out to be one of the most loyal and genuine people, probably within that organization, that night guard and everything like that. So a character like an evil magic mirror, there's clearly something more that meets the eye than just someone who's trying to take over bodies and corrupt the kingdom. But it's still a matter of where they're gonna go. Is she a victim? Is she a monster? Or is she a bit of both? And from what I'm gathering based on everything that we saw with Daida in this episode where he's trapped, he's basically contemplating his own sins. You know, the idea of looking down on those who couldn't see and couldn't hear after basically being warped by the magic mirror, now is pretty much living in the same type of world that he used to say that he would kill himself if he ever was put in that predicament. And now he's dealing with a very younger version of the mirror, Miranjo, and the fact of the matter is, apparently, based on what the voices are saying inside this mind, even though they're just as much of monsters as they're making her out to be, if what's to be believed in terms of what they're saying there, what we're hearing is that she killed people, she tortured people, and she did all these horrible things. But in terms of this little girl, she's, lost her hands, peeled the skin off her face. It doesn't seem like she's that type of person, but appearances can be deceiving. This crying, frail girl could actually be the most horrifying monster. And the person on the outside, that magic mirror that's currently talking, could actually have good intentions, all things considered. Or it could be the reverse. Maybe it's something to do with the way that, currently King Bosse is taking over his son's body. His son's mind is still inside him, but on the outside, the king is the one who's in control. So what if there's like an evil presence controlling the magic mirror on the outside, but deep down internally, it's just a scared little girl? There's a lot we don't know, but I'm willing to say that probably what was said about the horrible actions that this girl probably did, I think I'm willing to believe did happen, but I don't believe the little girl, the psyche that we saw in this episode is the one who did it. I'm thinking it is the one on the outside, or maybe it's going to be a giant bait and switch. Either way, it's nice to get more information, especially considering how they directed the first 5 minutes of this episode. Because Daida's been a character who's been misguided, who's been misled, but never was just an evil character or a horrible character for the sake of it. The fact of the matter is, when we look at Queen Hilling and just how he was raised to love his brother. The thing that really started to warp him was a magic mirror whispering in his ear saying how great you are, you're the best, and in return, that shaped someone who could have been probably the biggest asset to Boji from day one into someone who's his biggest criticism, saying how frail and weak he is. And I love seeing my boy here, Bebin, literally take him to the market, because when he's saying how weak and frail Boji is, he takes him to the market and shows him that this man here actually has more disabilities than your brother. He can't see, he can't hear, but look at how well he's getting on in his life. And he's saying about how he would kill himself if he was ever like that. And the fact that they immediately counter it with, so you're so self-conscious that you wouldn't have the ability to walk in pride, basically, and live your life. It's one of those things where you understand exactly how he got into that warped, shitty mind of thinking without excusing his behavior. And it's really nice to continue to see that the queen was never someone who is just warping perceptions and saying, oh, Daida, you're the best, and your brother's an absolute ass. It's really interesting to see how they started the show off, making us think that's all that was said, but once you start getting the full picture, you understand where things really went wrong, and the queen definitely wasn't one of them. The thing I'm really excited about is that with all the corruption and all the shit going on in this world, we end the episode with the king with 6 very powerful escaped criminals threatening his life. We have Boji popping up, we have the queen popping up, but what's interesting is that, Despa's brother is saying, within this commotion, we're going to take the kingdom, because ultimately that's what kings do in this time period. When there's an opportunity to expand your land, you take it, unless you have some sort of marriage treaty, okay, my son's gonna marry your daughter and this will keep harmony between us, right? And once that's out the window, then you take it for your own. So it's interesting to see that the captain of the Kingsguard seemingly is kind of concerned, he wants to tell Boji the truth, but also can't. So it seems like, Boji might have another ally in the making here, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do, where the loyalty will fall. Will it fall more on Boji's side, or will it fall on his king's orders? And it'll be interesting to see which direction they fully commit to. But, we have the Despa's arts now, right? Boji is a force, and it'd be interesting to see what he would be able to do, especially if the reason the kingdom doesn't fall is because of this little boy that the kingdom made fun of when he would walk down the street half naked when robbed of his clothes. what would the kingdom look like if they actually respected him after saving the day or something? I'm not sure. But either way, it's interesting, right? Because you have all these different pieces at play, and what normally should be a slower kind of setup episode is just as exhilarating as when I see Dorsey just like completely kind of Captain America, some devil beast. It's just really cool to see how the character writing continues to be fleshed out, and nothing feels forgettable. Like the fact that Hokro and his training and everything like that, he clearly can't do what he can, especially with like lifting a giant ass log, but he recognizes he has to find his own fighting style. Nothing is really forgettable about this show, and I think honestly, out of everything I saw in this episode, my favorite part was Despa once again. The idea that he never actually understood Boji. The only reason he understood the repeating of "after me" lines is because he heard him say it so many times, but he recognizes that this kid, he can tell how he feels. And the fact of the matter is, he's probably one of the biggest encouragements Boji has ever had in his life. And the fact that he goes from shock to tears of joy, it says how much of a mentor, father-like figure this man has been to him. And he easily could have been written as the scam artist, but from last week, maybe setting up a brawl, but never staging the outcomes of said brawl. We know Boji's talents are legit. We know Boji's beliefs in himself and not looking down because others are looking down on him, because as he said last week, everyone in your life is probably going to talk shit. Don't let it get to you, sort of a thing. You know, sticks and stones may break my bones, but honestly, you can break theirs if push comes to shove, right? I mean, just thinking about the future and the next 12 episodes that we have of this anime, it's really interesting because there's definitely a potential I see of Boji's saving the day or being part of saving the day, and, you know, the kingdom kind of rejoicing, being like, we were actually wrong, and maybe having a core of Boji as ruler. But at the same time, I could easily see it, like, sticking to the king on the throne for now, still inhabiting Daida's body, but Daida definitely is recognizing he needs his brother, so I'm curious if with the queen, with Boji, and Daida inside his own body, but kind of trapped, if that would be enough to force the king out, and then in return, because I truly believe the king is kind of setting up this master plan. He wants his sons to be safe, but he made a deal with the devil before he cared about family, so he's kind of in an interesting predicament. But I also don't think he hates the magic mirror either, so it's an interesting conundrum where you're trying to protect your family, but you're also feeling like you need to help this woman as well, who clearly has her own problems, and it's almost like, you know, a heroic thing where you're trying to help everyone, but at the end of the day, someone's going to have to suffer. And most likely is going to be the magic mirror or the queen herself. I think one of those two are going to be the big kind of suffering for the king before everything kind of goes back to seemingly normal for his sons and things like that. But, I mean, this show is incredible. I continue to say it's one of my favorite anime that have been made, and honestly, it's just getting higher and higher in my personal favorites list. And I swear to God, if this doesn't get a quality Blu-ray release when it's all said and done, that would be one of the biggest shames the anime medium has ever experienced. The show is amazing, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go from here. Let me know your thoughts, feelings down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.